Welcome to the channel. There's an undeniable truth. Humans are always drawn to the wilderness. We seek out mountains, forests, deserts, or secluded trails to find peace, to test our own limits. But the edge of the civilized world is also where the rules of society begin to blur. And sometimes encounters in the middle of nowhere become the worst nightmares. Today, we won't just venture deep into the woods, but also deep into the most primal human fears. Here are 8 stories shared by those who were lucky enough to survive and tell the tale. They learned a valuable lesson. When you're in the wild, the greatest danger often has 2 legs and a smile. Our first story comes from a park ranger. His job is to protect nature, but on some nights he realized he was the one who needed protection.
Story 1. The Radio Frequency. I work as a park ranger in a massive national park out west. One of my duties is to patrol at night, especially in the more remote camping areas. On this particular night, I was driving my truck down a dirt road when my radio suddenly crackled to life with a voice. It wasn't the voice of any of my colleagues. It was distorted and staticky, but I could still make out the words. Get out of here. I picked up the radio and asked, "This is Ranger Unit 4. Please identify yourself." There was no reply. Just the silence of the radio waves. I figured it was just interference, or someone playing a prank. I kept driving. 5 minutes later, the voice came through again. This time, clearer and more urgent. I said, "Get out of here. He's in the trees." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. He? Who was he? I stopped the truck and swept the surrounding forest with my headlights. Nothing seemed out of place. I reported the incident to dispatch, but they said no one else was using our frequency in this sector. I decided to turn back. As I was making a 3-point turn, the radio screamed again. This time it was a horrifying scream, a shout that was cut off abruptly by a sickening crack. And then, silence. I slammed on the gas and drove straight back to the station, not daring to look back. The next morning, we organized a search party in that area. We found nothing, except for a smashed old walkie-talkie at the base of a large oak tree. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, nothing. Who was that voice? And what happened to them? It's a mystery this park still holds. Sometimes, the threat doesn't warn you with a voice. It just watches, silently, waiting. Our next story is from a wildlife photographer who accidentally captured something that shouldn't have been in his photo.
Story 2. The Face in the Bushes. I'm a photographer specializing in wildlife. I often spend hours, even days, sitting quietly in camouflage blinds, waiting for the perfect shot. One time, I was deep in a nature preserve to photograph a herd of deer. After a long day, I returned home and started reviewing my photos. I was looking at a beautiful close-up of a magnificent buck when something in the background made me stop. Behind the deer, in a thick bush, something was wrong. I zoomed in on the image. My heart skipped a beat. Hidden among the leaves, almost perfectly blended with the shadows, was a face, a human face. The person was staring directly into my camera lens. Their eyes were empty, but they wore a grotesque, wide grin. The person was dressed in ragged clothes and seemed to be covered in mud and dirt for camouflage. I had been sitting there for 8 hours. That meant this person had also been there watching me for that entire time, only a few dozen meters away. I have never felt so terrified and vulnerable. I reported it to the preserve's management, but they never found anyone. That photograph remains the only evidence of the uninvited guest who shared the silence of the forest with me that day. An unexpected encounter can turn a fun trip into a run for your life. Our third story comes from 2 best friends, and the lesson they learned was never leave the trail. Story 3. The Shortcut. My best friend Sarah and I decided to hike a popular trail. Along the way, we met a very friendly-looking man, probably in his early 30s. He introduced himself as a biologist, studying the local flora. He walked with us for a while, pointing out different types of plants and telling interesting stories. He seemed very knowledgeable and trustworthy. When we were about halfway, he said, "Hey ladies, I know a shortcut. It leads to a beautiful waterfall that's not on the map." It'll save us a whole hour of walking." We, being young and naive at the time, agreed. He led us off the main trail and onto a small overgrown path. The deeper we went, the denser the trees became, and the air grew heavy. Sarah started to look nervous, but I tried to stay optimistic. After about 20 minutes, the path nearly disappeared completely. We were in the middle of a dense forest. The man stopped and turned to face us. His friendly smile was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating look. "Okay," he said, "now give me all your wallets and phones." We were stunned. Sarah started to cry. I shakily handed over my things. After taking all our valuables, he looked at us and said, "Now take off your clothes." That's when fear turned into pure panic. I screamed at Sarah, "Run!" and we turned and bolted. We didn't care about the direction, we just ran, crashing through thorny bushes. We could hear him cursing and chasing after us. Luckily, we were faster. After a while, the sound of his footsteps faded. We kept running until we stumbled back onto the main trail by chance. We ran into another group of hikers and begged them for help. The police were called, but they never caught him. Danger doesn't only exist on the surface. Sometimes it lurks in the deepest, darkest places. The next story is from a group of cavers who discovered they weren't the only living things down below.
Story 4. The Breath in the Darkness. Our group consisted of 3 people, all experienced cave explorers. We decided to explore an unmapped cave system in a remote area. After squeezing through a narrow entrance, we entered a vast chamber with multiple passages. We chose one and ventured deeper, carefully marking our path. About 2 hours in, we reached a deep pit. We used ropes to rappel down. At the bottom of the pit was an underground river. As we were preparing to cross, my flashlight beam swept over something in the corner of the cave. It was a pile of bones. Not animal bones. They were human bones. There were at least 2 different skeletons along with some tattered old clothes. We immediately decided to turn back. As we were preparing to climb, we heard a sound from the other side of the river, from the darkness. It was a cough, a hoarse, sick-sounding cough. We froze on the spot. Someone was here in the dark with us. We said nothing, just scrambled for the ropes. As I was climbing, I felt something grab my leg. I screamed and kicked wildly. I couldn't see anything, only felt a cold, weak grip. I managed to break free and my friends helped pull me up from the pit. We didn't dare look back. We just ran for our lives out of the cave. We reported it to the authorities. They sent a team to investigate, but they said they found no one, only the skeletons. They assumed they were lost explorers from years ago, but I know what we heard and what I felt. Someone was still alive down there. Sometimes the scariest story isn't about a chase or a monster, but about human loneliness and desperation. Our 5th story is a brief encounter that has haunted the storyteller for a lifetime. Story 5. The Woman by the Lake.
I was fishing alone at a remote mountain lake. It was a very quiet place, rarely visited by anyone. As I was sitting on the bank, I saw a woman emerge from the woods. She looked very thin, and her clothes were old. She walked to the water's edge, about 50 meters from me, and just stood there, staring down at the lake's surface. She remained perfectly still like that for almost an hour. I started to get worried. I called out, "Ma'am, are you all right?" She slowly turned her head to look at me. Her eyes were empty and full of despair. She didn't say anything, just slowly shook her head. Then she turned back to the lake. My gut told me something was terribly wrong. I packed up my things and decided to leave to find help. As I walked a short distance away, I looked back. The woman was no longer there. I ran back to the water's edge, hoping she had just walked back into the woods. But there were no footprints, except for her own, leading to the edge of the water. And they stopped there. I called the rescue team. They searched for days, but never found any trace of her. It was as if she had just vanished into thin air. I always wonder if I could have done something different. The image of her despairing eyes still haunts me. Curiosity can lead to great discoveries, but it can also lead you to places you should never have gone.
The next story is from a group of teenagers who found something that wasn't meant for them. Story 6. The Tapes in the Cellar. When I was a teenager, my friends and I used to explore abandoned houses in our area. There was an old farmhouse that had been deserted for decades. We decided to check it out. The house was decrepit, but what caught our attention was a cellar door on the outside. It was locked with a rusty chain. After a struggle, we managed to break it. Below was a dark, damp cellar. In a corner, we found a metal box. Inside were dozens of old videotapes. Curious, we took a few of them home. That night, we gathered and put one of the tapes into a VCR. The screen flickered to life, showing a static image of an empty room, identical to the cellar we had just been in. After a few minutes, a man wearing a mask walked into the frame, dragging another person who was bound and gagged. What followed was a horrific sight. It was a snuff film. We were horrified and immediately turned it off. We called the police and told them everything. They investigated the farm and found evidence that multiple murders had taken place in that cellar. The killer was never caught. We had accidentally stumbled upon his collection of atrocities. Sometimes you don't have to go deep into the woods to find danger. Sometimes it's right on the side of the road, waiting for someone trusting to come along. Story 7. The Broken Down Car. I was driving home late one stormy night on an interstate highway. Suddenly, I got a flat tire. I pulled over to the shoulder, completely stranded. A few minutes later, an old pickup truck pulled up behind me. A large man got out and offered to help. He said he could change the tire for me. I was so grateful. As he was working, he started telling strange stories. He talked about how much he loved driving at night and about the things he would find on the side of the road. His tone made me feel uneasy. After he finished changing the tire, I thanked him and offered to pay him. He waved his hand and said, "No need, but you could do me a favor." He pointed to the back of his truck. "I've got something heavy back there. Can you help me hold it steady while I tie the rope again?" My intuition screamed, "No." I lied and said I was in a huge hurry and had to leave immediately. I got in my car and locked the doors. His expression changed instantly. He slammed his fist on my car window and yelled, "You have to help me." I panicked, stepped on the gas, and sped away. As I looked in my rearview mirror, I saw that the tarp on the back of his truck had been partly blown away by the wind. Underneath, I could see the shape of something large, wrapped in a big cloth. The shape of a human body. And our final story tonight is a reminder that even in your own backyard, the wilderness and its mysteries are never too far away. Story 8. The Man in the Yard. My family lived in a house with a large yard that backed up against a dense forest. One night our dog wouldn't stop barking. My dad went outside to check. He came back in, his face pale. He said he had seen a man standing at the edge of the woods, just beyond our fence. The man was just standing there, staring at our house. We called the police. They came and searched the area, but found no one. They suggested it might have just been someone who got lost, but it didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, we kept finding strange things in our yard. Small stick figures made of twigs were left on our windowsills. Circles of stones were neatly arranged on the lawn. And sometimes at night, we would still hear the dog barking furiously towards the woods. We installed security cameras. One night, the camera caught him. A thin man in ragged clothes crawled out of the forest and into our yard. He walked around the house, peering into the windows. Then he took something out of his pocket, a dead bird, and placed it on our front doorstep. After that, he returned to the forest and disappeared. We showed the footage to the police, but they couldn't identify the man. We don't know who he was or what he wanted. Living with the feeling of being watched in your own home is an indescribable terror. We had to move shortly after that. 8 stories, 8 encounters on the border between our world and another, more primal and unpredictable one. They are a reminder that no matter how advanced our technology becomes, there are still dark corners where the light of civilization cannot reach. Thank you for listening. Hopefully these stories serve as a warning, a reminder to always be cautious. Always trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Join us next time. Stay safe out there, wherever you are.